Do you know that Canada has more than 80 immigration programs in 2025 you can choose from? Yes, you heard that right. More than 80 programs. And I can just imagine how complicated, how complex it becomes for someone who's thinking of moving to Canada. To reduce this confusion for you, I'm making this video today, which shortlists the top 9 immigration programs which I think you should be thinking of in order to move to Canada. Let's have a look at the agenda for today. So first of all, we are going to discuss about the annual immigration table, which is the main source which lets the immigration minister decide that, okay, I am going to choose these people from these categories in these immigration programs. So this is the route. That's why it's very important to get hang of this immigration table. So after that, we will discuss about the programs which exist on paper but are hanging in between or are not very useful to us. And then we've got all these immigration programs which we will be briefly discussing today. Namely, that's Canadian Experience Class, Foreign Skilled Worker, Healthcare Occupations Category, Trades Occupations Category, the Education Occupations Category, the French Language Proficiency Category, the Atlantic Immigration Program, the Agri-Food Pilot Program, the Rural and Francophone Community Immigration Pilot Programs, and lastly, the Home Care Worker Immigration Pilot Programs. So let's start with the annual immigration table that they release somewhat around November of every year. And this decides which programs the immigration minister is likely to invite the people for immigration. This year, you can see in 2025, they've got a dedicated space for the French language proficiency, which is outside the province of Quebec. So over the next 3 years, you can see in 25, 26, 27, they are going to be increasing the number of French speakers. So if you're from one of the French-speaking countries, good for you. And if you're not, then you better start learning French, because that's going to be the focus for the next few years. And it's not a small number that we can ignore. So you can see it's going to be close to 30,000 this year, and then it's increasing by a few more hundred every year. Next comes the economic class programs. The first one is the federal economic priorities, and there's a footnote number 5. Let's quickly have a look what that footnote is on the next page. So the footnote says that in 2025, the priorities are going to be healthcare occupations, trade occupations, French language, and on Feb 27, 2025, they also included the education occupations category, and we'll look into that in some time. Next, you've got in Canada focus, and you've got close to 83,000 spots in this category. And if we look at the footnote number 6, it says that they're basically going to target people who are already inside Canada. And time and again, considering that the number of temporary foreign workers or people on temporary status in 2025 is way too high, they are going to focus to give immigration or PR or permanent residency to the people who are inside Canada. But they are not ruling out that they could still invite people from the federal skilled worker program or through the federal skilled trades. And we'll discuss about that as well in some time. Then you've got the federal business. This is primarily the startup visa program. And then you've got these economic pilots, and we'll discuss what these pilots are. And then you've got a very stable immigration program, which is the Atlantic Immigration Program. And you've got close to 5,000 spots in this one. And then there's the PNP, which is a shocker for this year, because last year we had more than 100,000 spots available under the PNP. And it shows that the slots or the spots have been reduced by 50% for almost all the provinces. And then you've got the cubic skilled worker. You've got 35,000, close to 35,000 spots in this one, and a very meager number of 50 under the regularization of public policy programs. So let's not even bother with it. Here are my views about the programs that on paper exist. They are part of this year's uh, uh, possibilities that people could get invitations into these programs, but I'm not focusing too much on these programs. So let's first talk about the federal skilled trades. The last draw in which people were invited, that happened prior to COVID. That was on August 6, 2020. So I would say don't even bother about looking at this program, even though it is open. And instead target the express entry trades category program. And there's a list of certain occupations which we will visit in some time. Then you've got the AgriPilot, which has just over 1,000 spots. This program was released somewhat in Jan, saying that the deadline is going to be May 14, 2025. But this program closed on Feb 12, 2025. And I'm recording this video on the 19th of March, 2025. So you can see that it's very important to, if you're planning to immigrate, think early in the year, because that's when they're likely to open the programs, and the spots are very limited and they fill up very quickly. Next, you've got the self-employed persons program, which is mainly targeted towards the artists or the athletes. But this program is closed right now because of the previous backlog. There's a huge backlog. And next, you've got the startup visa program. Again, it is going to be limited to around 1,200 to 2,000 applicants. This is geared towards the entrepreneurs who want to launch startups in Canada. But the bad part is that you've got the processing time is 40 months. So I don't know if you would like to wait that much. But it could be a good program for a few people. Another limitation of this program is that you need to have certain kind of entities supporting you. These can be venture capitalists, angel investors, or the incubators. And each of these entities, which are limited, which are designated by immigration, first of all, they've been limited to give just 10 spots. So there's a lot of competition, and I've heard, some bad things about this program, let's say. So there's some corruption and stuff like that. So I tend to stay away from this program. But it could be good for, genuine entrepreneurs who've got very promising ideas and they've, done their proof of concepts already. You could think about this program. Practically speaking, I feel if you target the FSW or the CEC programs, especially in the healthcare, trades, and education and French, you've got a much better chance of immigrating. All right. And another important area for you to look is if you're already inside Canada, and generally speaking, if you got a job offer in the province and your employer is eligible depending on the program and you're eligible, then PNPs is also a good program, or are good programs that you can target. As I said, the quota has been reduced from 110,000 to 55,000, but it is still a good option for many. All right, let's start with our very first and the most popular immigration program, which is the Canadian Experience Class, or the CEC in short. The requirements for this program are: first, you need to have at least 1 year of Canadian work experience. That is 1,560 hours, because they don't count anything above 30 hours per week. And you need to be doing a skilled job that belongs to NOC tiers 0, 1, 2, or 3. NOC 0 refers to the managerial positions. NOC tier 1 refers to the professional occupations, and 2 and 3, they belong to the skilled trades or technical jobs or supervisory positions for such occupations. The other thing is that the work experience that you should have gained should have been in a legal status, while you were in Canada. In terms of education, there's no formal requirement for any education. However, one thing to note is that whether it's Canadian Experience Class or the Federal Skilled Worker or the Federal Skilled Trades, you need to have good CRS, which is the Comprehensive Ranking System score. And by the way, I have made another video showing in great length. I think it's a 40-minute plus video showing how you can improve your CRS score, and I will share a link for that video as well in the description. Okay, so getting back, so you need to have a very high CRS score, and you can get that by having some formal education. That's why, even though there's no formal education requirement, but it's good if you have. And that education has to be also then assessed by one of the dedicated agencies in Canada who do this assessment of your overseas qualifications, if you are planning to include your overseas qualification for this purpose. Next, language proficiency. So you need to have a score of CLB 7 if you have experience in NOC tier 0 or 1 occupation, and you need to have a score of CLB 5 if you're doing a NOC tier 2 or 3 job. What if you have a mix of both tier 2 or 3 occupation and tier 0 or 1? In this case, if you have, let's say, 7 months of experience in a tier 0 or 1 occupation, then you're required to have CLB 7. And if you have let's say more experience, let's say 7 months in tier 2 or 3, then you need to get CLB 5. And you can take either English or French exams. The acceptable exams are IELTS General Training or CELPIP or PTE Core. And in French, you could take the TEF Canada or the TCF Canada. These are the only acceptable language tests. Also, with the federal programs, you always must have an intention to live outside Quebec. Remember that Quebec has its own immigration program that has nothing to do with the outside Quebec federal programs. So therefore, when you are looking to apply for PR for federal programs, it has to be outside Quebec. And this applies to Federal Skilled Worker, Federal Skilled Trades, or any other immigration program, which is not part of the Quebec immigration programs. Okay, next. As always with all the immigration programs, you need to be meeting the admissibility requirements, that you are not inadmissible on medical, criminal, or security grounds. Some additional notes: you cannot be claiming work experience for any periods of self-employment or when you were a full-time student. They do not count towards your CEC eligibility. Also, if you have part-time work experience, yes, you can include it, but the total experience should be 1,560 hours in the last 3 years. The processing time, as of Jan 8, 2025, it is taking around 5 months to process CEC applications. Next, we have the Federal Skilled Worker Program, and the minimum eligibility requirements are: you need to have 1 year of continuous full-time work experience. So the keyword here is continuous full-time. Which is different from the Canadian Experience Class, in which you could accumulate experience over certain gaps. And for example, you've worked for 6 months, you got a 2-month gap, and then you work another 6 months. That's fine. But this is not going to work if you are a foreign skilled worker. Minimum, you need to have 1 year of continuous full-time work experience in the last 10 years. Again, this is targeting tier 0, 1, 2, or 3 occupations, and the work experience must be paid. Any unpaid internships or volunteer work are not considered. And paid, the good thing with this FSW program is that paid continuous work experience gained while you were studying counts, unlike the Canadian Experience Class. In terms of language proficiency, The threshold is a bit higher in this program. You need to get CLB 7. Again, you've got the same acceptable tests as before, and these tests need to be like before, not more than 2 years old at the time of submitting your PR application. In terms of education, minimum requirement is you need to have at least a high school diploma, and it needs to be assessed if it's not Canadian education. There's another requirement in FSW, which is the proof of funds. So you need to demonstrate that you've got settlement funds depending on your family size. And to start with, for a single applicant, the minimum requirement as of 2024 is 13,757 Canadian dollars, and we're talking about liquid funds, no crypto. In addition to this, so you will have CRS points for your federal skilled worker program, but in addition to that, you also need to meet a minimum of 67 out of 100 selection factor points. And when we are doing our assessments for our clients, we also make sure that they are getting these 67 points, because that is also one of the minimum eligibility criteria, which is unlike the Canadian Experience Class or the Federal Skilled Trades program. So these are the factors: language proficiency, education, work experience, age, arranged employment, and adaptability. And next requirement is the admissibility. Like before, you cannot be inadmissible for criminal, medical, or security concerns. And you've got to be having this intention to live outside Quebec. And right now, the processing time for FSW applications is approximately 6 months. Next, we move on to the occupation category programs. These occupation categories include healthcare, trades, and education. The common theme across all of them is that you need to be an applicant under one of the core express entry programs. And what do I mean by core express entry programs? That is, you need to be an applicant either under this Canadian Experience Class or the Federal Skilled Worker or the Federal Skilled Trades programs. So as long as you meet the requirements of one of these core programs, you could be an eligible applicant if you meet the next set of requirements, which for the healthcare occupations includes, first, the work experience. You need to have in the last 3 years at least 6 months of continuous work experience in one of these eligible occupations. The eligible occupations are quite a lot, and they've expanded the list this year versus last year. And don't worry, I will be sharing this document in the description, and you can download it for free, and you can have a look at all these occupations. Next, we get onto the trades programs. So same base set of requirements, and the eligible occupations for this category has also been expanded. And surprisingly, they've added cooks, which is quite a common occupation. And unfortunately, that's going to raise the CRS threshold for the other occupations too. But that's how the program is designed. Nothing can be done about it. But yeah, it's quite a good news, because last year we just had 10 occupations, and this time we have 25 occupations in the trades who could get eligible through the trades category program. And next is the education category. This was a surprise because we were not expecting this, but it's good news for the educators out there that they've included this category. The base category requirements, the base requirements are the same as the other two. The occupations included are this secondary school teachers, elementary school and kindergarten teachers, early childhood educators and assistants, instructors of persons with disabilities, and lastly, the elementary and secondary school teacher assistants. So it's a great news for the teachers. So there's a shortage in these occupations. Even if you're outside of Canada, and this applies across the board, including healthcare and trades. If you have 6 months of continuous work experience and you meet FSW requirements and you're outside Canada, I highly urge you to at least create your profile. You never know when they do a general category draw or an FSW draw, and then you might get lucky. Next, we move on to the French language proficiency program. Under this program, one of the eligibility requirements, like the above programs, is that you need to meet one of the express entry program requirements. That is, you need to be an eligible applicant either under CEC, FSW, FST. And in addition to that, you need to get a score of CLB 7 or NCLC 7 in all 4 language abilities, that is listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And the approved French language exams you can take are the TEF Canada and the TCF Canada. And lastly, again, like before, you need to demonstrate your intention to live outside Quebec. Moving on, we next have the Atlantic Immigration Program. This program has been in existence for quite a few years, but in the shape of a pilot program. But due to the success of this program has been converted as a permanent feature of the annual immigration table. And there are quite a few spots in this program. I believe this year it's 5,000 spots. So that's something that cannot be ignored if you are planning to move to the Atlantic provinces, or you're already working there and you plan to get your residency through the Atlantic Immigration Program. Then this is the program to look out for. The provinces we are referring to here are Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland and Labrador, and lastly, New Brunswick. So the requirements of this program are as follows: that first, you need to have a job offer from a designated employer. There are certain requirements for a company or for a business to become a designated employer, and we help our employer clients to become designated if they are not. Or if you have an employer who is wishing to support you through this program and they're not designated, there's a separate application process, and we can help them get designated if they are not already designated. And there's a list of all such designated employers, which I will share with you shortly. And you can see who all these designated employers are. So the job offer that you need to have is a valid job offer from a designated employer. It should be full-time, non-seasonal, and it needs to be in tier 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. So there's a difference here compared to the above programs we looked at. They are also including tier 4 occupations, which we also call as semi-skilled occupations, because tier 0, 1, 2, and 3 are known as high-skilled occupations, whereas tier 4 is known as semi-skilled and tier 5 is known as low-skilled. This program does not target low-skilled occupations, but only high-skilled and semi-skilled. Next, we have work experience. So you need to have a minimum of 1560 hours, or that is equivalent to 1 year of work experience within the last 5 years. It doesn't have to be continuous, so that's an added bonus. In terms of where you can get this experience, so it can be inside or outside Canada, but it cannot be self-employed or as a volunteer or unpaid. But there's another good thing about this program is that if you were an international student and you studied in these Atlantic provinces for at least 16 months within the last 2 years before you graduated, then you don't even need to meet the 1 year work experience requirement. Next, we have education. So if you are looking for a tier 2, 3, or 4 job offer, the minimum education requirement is a Canadian high school diploma or an equivalent foreign credential. But if you are looking at a tier 0 or 1 job offer, then you must have 1 year Canadian post-secondary educational credential. Like above, the foreign credentials are valid for 5 years once you get them done. So be mindful of that. If it is expiring, you might want to renew your educational credential assessment. Next, we have the language proficiency. So if you have a job offer in NOC tiers 0, 1, 2, or 3, you must get CLB 5. But if you have a semi-skilled job offer in tier 4, you can be good with just CLB 4. In terms of settlement funds, you must have settlement funds for yourself and your family, but this can be exempted if you are already residing and working in Canada with a valid work permit. Then you don't need to meet the settlement plan requirements. In terms of the process a little bit, so another requirement is that you need to have the provincial endorsement. But the process for that is that your designated employer has to support you by helping you connect with a designated settlement service provider, and they help you develop a settlement plan with your employer on how they're going to assist in your settlement. And once you have that, your endorsement application is submitted to the province, and once they approve it, you get this endorsement letter, which then you can use to apply for your permanent residency to the federal government. But if you're short on time, or you don't have enough experience, or while your PR application is ongoing and you wish to work for your Canadian employer, then you can also in the interim submit your work permit application, and the documents you would be submitting at this stage would be the copy of your provincial endorsement certificate, your job offer, your language test results, your ECA or the educational credential assessment, your settlement plan confirmation. So these are the kind of documents you will be submitting for your work permit application under this program. So you could get up to 2 years of work permit. The processing times for this application averaging around 9 months as of Jan 17, 2025. And as I promised, here is the list of all these designated employers. I just checked these links right now. They're working. So yeah, you're good to go. If you want to get the list, download this document. I will share the link for this document in the description. Moving on, we have the Agri-Food Pilot Program. This program has also been in existence over the past few years, but this year, unfortunately, the quota was very limited. Last year, we had 2,750 spots under this program, but this year, when it was announced sometime early in Jan, they mentioned that we'll be having just over 1,000 spots for this program. And because of such a high demand, this program was filled already on Feb 12, 2025. And as I'm recording this video on March 19, 2025, I am giving you this disclosure that if you wish to target this program next year, you have to be in line at the start of the year. And this is also the case with caregiver program, which we will talk in some time. But immigration programs open at the start of the year, and the quotas finish up towards the end of the year. So you have a much higher chance of success if you happen to be eligible at the start of the year. So do keep this in mind. In terms of the requirements, so work experience requirement, you need to have at least 1 year or 1560 hours of non-seasonal full-time work experience in Canada. Overseas work experience does not count. And the work experience can only be considered valid work experience if it has been gained through LMI work permit or under the vulnerable open work permit. You don't need to be currently on an LMI based work permit. Let's say you gain this experience under the LMI based work permit, but now you happen to be on an open work permit. This will not disqualify you. You will still be meeting the eligibility requirements. Next, you need to have a job offer. Most likely it will be your ongoing job offer. So you need to be having a full-time, that is minimum of 30 hours per week. It should be non-seasonal, permanent, ineligible occupation and industry, I have this list just on the next page. Again, this is a federal program, so it has to be outside Quebec, and you need to be getting a wage that meets or exceeds the prevailing wage. So this will happen by default if you're working on a LMI based work permit. Next, we have the language requirements. It's a bit easy on this one. So that's just CLB4 and all the language abilities. And the exams accepted in English are IELTS and CELPIP. And I believe there should be PTE core as well. I think I missed that. And in terms of French, this is you have TEF Canada or TCF Canada. Again, the exams should be less than 2 years old. In terms of education, Canadian high school diploma or a foreign equivalent is good enough. If you're residing in Canada when you apply, you may choose to meet either the education requirement or the job offer requirement. If you are residing outside of Canada when you apply for this program, you must meet both the educational requirement and the job offer requirement. So that's a unique point for this program. In terms of settlement funds, again, you need to demonstrate you've got enough funds to support yourself and your family, and the amount again is based on your family size, your property, your investment, and borrowed funds are not accepted as proof of funds. Your temporary resident status, if you are inside Canada, you must maintain your status inside Canada. You cannot be out of status when you are applying for this application. And next we have the eligible industries and occupations. So an important point to note, as I mentioned above, is you must be in the specific industry sector. So if we look at industrial butchers, retail butchers, food processing laborers, all these knockouts are acceptable, but only if you're working within this industry. So for example, I will give you an example, which is general farm workers. Now, you could be a general farm worker on any kind of farm, but that does not make you eligible. For you to become eligible under the Agri-Food Pilot Program, in addition to working in this occupation, you must also be working not on any kind of farm, but it has to be either a greenhouse or a nursery or in floriculture production, including mushroom production. So that's something very important to know, that your work setting, or that is your industry sector, also matters a lot. And next, we have the rural and francophone community immigration pilot programs. This is something of a modification compared to the last year. Last year, we had just the rural part of the program, but not the francophone participating communities. And again, this has been a pilot that has been in existence for quite a few years, and they've changed the communities for this year. This is the list of rural participating communities, and we also have francophone participating communities. As of now, not all programs have gone live. The IRCC website shows that which programs have gone live or which programs websites have gone live. But for example, yesterday I was checking the West Kootenay program for one of my clients during the consultation, and though the website has gone live, but the community requirements have not yet been released. So keep a constant look on the community websites for further program requirements. There are certain requirements for both the employers and the employees. What I mean to say is that if you are getting a job offer from one of these communities, that does not automatically qualify you for the permanent residency. Each community has its own further criteria in addition to the federal criteria. So sometimes some communities having shortage in certain occupations, and they have certain expectations from employers in terms of how old or how established the business is in the community. So you have to keep a look on those requirements too, before you apply for permanent residency under this program. So there are, as I was saying, there are employer requirements. So there's a minimum set of requirements. The federal requirements, these are that the employer must have been operating continuously for at least 2 years in the participating community. The community may waive this requirement if they determine that the employer can make a substantial contribution to the participating community's economy. And the employer must be in good standing and comply with employment standards and health and safety legislations relevant in the community or province. And the employer must be doing the business in at least one priority occupation that the community has identified. The communities, they set priorities, they set the priority sectors and occupations that can be filled through the pilots based on the local economic development priorities. And the employer must be doing at least 75% of the business work within the community. And the employer must not be in violation of any employer compliance regime. They must complete the free onboarding training for their employees. They must also, to be eligible under this program, they must complete a free intercultural competency training, which is very similar to the Atlantic immigration program being discussed above, and also agree to support the settlement of the newcomers, so which is very similar to the Atlantic immigration program, that a settlement plan has to be devised for this program. So when I was making this slide some days ago, programs had not gotten live yet. Maybe there are a few, but this should be checked every time we are looking to apply for our clients, or if you're looking to do it yourself. So candidate, in terms of candidate eligibility requirements, the job offer must be from a designated employer, and the job offer must be full-time, non-seasonal, permanent, within the community, and you must have a similar skill level as the candidates, qualifying work experience, which is unique part of this program. Unlike other programs, you needed to have directly relevant experience for skilled occupations, but this is not the case in this program. What I mean is that if you are getting a job offer in tier 0 or 1 occupation, you could have a relevant work experience under tier 0, 1, 2 or 3 occupations. If it is tier 4, you can go a few tiers higher or lower, that is tier 1, 2, 3 or 4. If it is a tier 3 or 4 job offer, you could have relevant work experience in tiers 2, 3 or 4 occupations. And if it is tier 5, then it must be in the same 5-digit knock code. So that's something unique with this program. There are certain exemptions for work experience that apply. So if you were an international student who graduated from a publicly funded post-secondary school from this community in which you're getting the job offer, in this case, you're exempt from the work experience requirement if you completed a 2-year program or longer, and you studied full-time for the entire program, and you got your credential, the education credential, no more than 18 months before you are applying for your permanent residency, and you were residing in the community for at least 16 of the last 24 months while studying. But if you are a master's degree or a higher student who graduated in the last 18 months, you are also exempt from this requirement. Again, you must have studied full-time and were in the community for the length of your studies. So that's an added bonus for the international students who studied in the community. You don't need to meet the work experience requirements. There's a special scenario for one particular occupation. So if you have your work experience as a registered nurse or a registered psychiatric nurse, which is a tier 1 occupation, you should be good if you have a job offer as a nurse aide, which is a tier 3 occupation, or as a home support worker, which is a tier 4 occupation. So that's a special scenario to be considered if you happen to be in this case. If you, as I said, if you don't have if you've not studied in the community, then you must have at least 1 year of relevant work experience or related work experience in the past 3 years. In terms of language requirements, again, it depends on the job offer. So if you have a tier 0 or 1 occupation, job offer occupation, then you must meet CLB 6. If you have a tier 2 or 3 occupation job offer, then you must meet CLB 5. If it is tier 4 or 5, then you must have CLB 4 in all language abilities. In terms of qualifications, you must have a Canadian education credential or a foreign credential of at least high school. And in terms of settlement funds, again, there's this table. Depending on the family size, you must have this amount of settlement funds. Remember to check the settlement fund requirements at the time you are applying for your permanent residency, as these can change at any time. In terms of the process, so the designated employer needs to complete a recommendation application, and they send it to the community, which is similar to the Atlantic Immigration Program when they apply for the endorsement. So likewise here, if the community approves, they'll send a recommendation letter to the candidate, and once the candidate gets their recommendation certificate, they can then apply for the permanent residency. Additional community requirements. Each participating community has its own additional requirements, as I was explaining, for the employers and candidates, and these can be related to priority occupations. They can be requirements related to a point system to select the candidates. Some may have a blank set of requirements, while others might have a complicated set of requirements requiring candidates to possess certain number of points. Again, we have to check the community program requirements. Also, the information, as I said, is not available yet for all the programs, and it'll, I believe, go live for almost every program in the next month or two max. Lastly, if your work permit is expiring or you're in need of one and you have a job offer, candidates who meet the requirements for this program, you are also eligible to apply for a temporary closed 2-year work permit. And lastly, we have the home care worker immigration pilot, or the pilots. This is very vague so far. It's March 19, 2025, and this program is going live on March 31, and we don't have the full set of requirements. So far, what we know is that there will be 2 streams, one for the workers inside Canada, and the second one is for the applicants not working in Canada. When the pilot opens, IRCC will only accept applications for workers in Canada stream. There will be a cap of 2,750 spots, including 2,600 workers in Canada and 150 out-of-status foreign nationals inside Canada. We don't have any clarity at this stage if these spots are combined or they will be further broken and allocated to the children caregivers and caregivers of people with medical needs, like it was the case in the previous years when this pilot was in a different format. But the good thing this year is that the people who apply through this program, they will straight away get their permanent residency, unlike last year where if you had not met the requirements, you would have to come inside Canada, complete the minimum required term to gain the experience, and then you could apply for your work experience. So this is going to be a very in high demand program, and the trend has been that over the past few years, the program quotas were filled within few hours. So it's going to be sheer luck that even if you have a job offer, you meet the requirements, it's going to be sheer luck considering the volume of applications IRCC is expecting to receive. In terms of candidate eligibility requirements, you must have a minimum of CLB4 in English or French. You must have an equivalent of Canadian high school diploma or higher. You must have at least 6 months of recent and relevant work experience or related caregiving training credential. In terms of job offer, they've been more relaxed this year. They have also allowed these kind of institutions to give you the job offer, which include private households, organizations that directly hire full-time workers to provide short-term or occasional home care for those who are semi-independent or recovering from injury or illness. And this could be your home healthcare service providers, home care support service providers, direct care agencies, personal care services in residential settings, pediatric home healthcare service providers. So yeah, that's it. That's all the programs we've covered this year that are going to be in focus. I hope you have a much more clearer picture on the overall quotas, the overall theme, the overall immigration table, and how that further defines the quotas for each programs. And I hope you are able to utilize this information to your advantage and make the best use. If you have any feedback for me or you would like to know a bit more, let me know and I will make further content based on your feedback. As I said, I will be sharing the this PDF in itself and also the Express Entry training video, which helps you to boost your Express Entry score. So looking forward to your feedback. Thank you.